Welcome to Fill the Glass. I'm Cary Millsap. And last week, Marisad, you started this because you said something very nice. You said that my voice was very calming and that you enjoyed the show, and part of it was just the calm aspect. And not too long, and then we had a little discussion about that in the after party. And then not too long after that, Martin sent me a note that said, it might not be a bad idea if you talk about that for a little bit. And so last Tuesday, I decided that today I would talk a little bit about calm. And it comes, it's not a new idea. It's not something that happens by accident. Um, I I really feel honored that somebody associates me with calmness, and it fits. I'm going to show you actually something from page 3 of the Faster book. I mean, the very beginning of the Faster book. It's page number 3, but it's actually only the second page of the text. This was my job back when I joined Oracle in 1989. I kind of did a number of different things that my bosses asked me to do for a couple of years before I kind of found my place inside Oracle. And most of you probably know I worked for Oracle from 1989 to 1999. And my job in the early 90s was to put on a suit, get on an airplane, and fly someplace, either Monday morning or Sunday evening, and then stay there for usually 5 days, but sometimes only 4, and solve a hard problem. A lot of times I'd be asked to some place kind of in the earlier years. It'd be like, hey, can you come in? We bought some new disk drives and we'd like to export and then re-import the database onto, more spread out drives. So not every place I went was an emergency, but some places I went, they were an emergency and I didn't realize it. Like, why did you buy all these disks? Well, it's because we've got a user in finance that's really hacked off about how slow the Oracle financials are. And of course, I didn't know that going in. I would find that out when I got there. And sometimes I wouldn't figure it out until Wednesday. I'd get my work done, what they asked me to do. And then Wednesday, they'd introduce me to some new person that was having performance problems and might have been pretty upset. So I did that a number of times. I would go to 30 sites a year. And I kind of graduated into doing the more high tension, high stress, really difficult. You'd get there and everybody would be just frustrated and panicked in some cases and angry, like yelling on the phone, slamming phones down. And, I'd show up. I mentioned this last week. I'd show up in my little suit and my business card with the red word on it that says Oracle. And so, a lot of times back in those days, customers had a right to be angry. These are the 4 steps that I had to do every single week. Number 1, listen, let people just vent their venom, explain why they're angry and why they're frustrated. And my job at this point was to listen. It wasn't to say yes, but, or anything like that. It was just to listen sympathetically and try to get as much actual data. There might be a lot of emotion, and I needed to understand that as well. But there was also real data in what they were saying, and then basically calm them down so that they can function. It's very difficult to function when you're upset, when you're mad, when you're panicked, when you're angry, when you're frustrated. So step 2, there's that word. There's that word that Marisad used last week. Calm them down so they can think clearly. And there's a number of ways to do that. Number 1 is just be willing to listen. And I can remember sitting at various conference tables in step 1, just thinking any minute now, they're going to stop talking and they're all going to look at me and it's going to be my turn to talk. And so most of the time I'm sitting there, I'm trying to think, okay, if they point at me and say, okay, it's your turn now, what am I going to say? And I think probably the most success that I had was kind of a read back. I heard this. Did I get it right? And that almost, it's a technique called mirroring. If you might have heard that term in other other domains, but basically kind of mirror back what I heard to make sure that I got it right. And there's an added benefit of they understand that I've got it right. And if I don't have it right, this is the place to get the feedback to calibrate. So then number three is the hard part. Number three, convince them that you have a process they can trust. Because what they've typically been exposed to is other people who say they can help who failed. A lot of times I wasn't the first person to come in and try to smooth things over, but I always tried to be the last. So convincing people that you have a process they can trust, sometimes that meant going to the whiteboard and saying, I'll bet here's what you feel when this happens. And if you say that enough times and it's true, then people start to get the idea that you have a model in your head that actually works, that actually is capable of understanding the situation that they're in. And of course, most people think the number four is all there is. Walk in, type some stuff, make everything better, get on the next airplane and go home. This was my job. So this calm thing, I mean, I would go places every week where people were upset. My dad was an airline pilot. And the old joke, I don't know if it's true or not, but there was a Hawaiian Air 737 flight where the fuselage basically came apart. I think there might have been one fatality, but pretty much everybody survived and the whole top ripped off the aircraft. And I can remember the joke that I heard about that. And I'm not sure, it might have been real, but it was told as a joke where apparently the captain had said, on the right, you can see Molokai, and those of you in the forward cabin, if you look up, you can see the majesty of space. And so, the joke is that airline pilots are cool and calm and collected, even in the face of grave danger. And so that, my dad honored that ethic. And I've learned through the years that when I lose it, nothing good happens. And the thing, I guess, that I want to say about representing Oracle in all of those engagements where people were angry was I've always felt like my mission was to find the truth, join the two sides that are at odds together, and then I get the bonus of, no matter how bad it is Monday morning, I get to look at my watch and go, I get to go home Friday and I don't have to live here next Monday because I get to go someplace else next Monday. And that was a great, I don't know, almost a crutch, I guess, because not everybody has that luxury of being able to say, I'm not a permanent part of this. So I can come in, be a catalyst, maybe help people realize that they need to make some changes and then move on. And hopefully my presence made a difference. So one of my roles, since I got to see so many customers, a lot of them were smaller. I was the person that would be invited to conferences to sit on the panel with Ron Wall and Dave Spicer and the EVPs and product managers and product marketing managers of mostly Oracle Financial Manufacturing software. And I would be there expressly to kind of represent the 20 or 30 clients that weren't big enough to have a representative up at the up in the stands. And I can remember, Mark, you'll remember this name. You remember Nancy Lane. And she was the president, I think, of the Oracle Applications User Group. And I can remember her standing on stage with me, sitting in the little tiered bleachers thing with all the Oracle executives and a few client reps answering questions. And she was in charge of taking the suggestion box and pulling a suggestion or a question out of the suggestion box and reading it to the audience. And I can remember she pulled out a piece of paper and unfolded it. And then she laughed. And she said, well, I'm sworn to say what the thing says. And she starts off on the sheet of paper. Do you remember this, Mark? She goes, okay, here we go. Why in the hell? And there was some question about why Oracle did this thing that was hurting people. But that was the sentiment is there was a lot of anger and frustration and angst in it. And it followed through to conferences where people got to air out their grievances and stuff. So it was a pretty rough ride back in those days, but doing it every week and then, starting to realize there are some tools. There are tools, try to, the same person that uses the term mirroring, he's a guy named, I have his, it's over there. Chris Voss is who I'm channeling when I talk about mirroring. And he also talks about the late night FM radio DJ voice. That if somebody kind of comes at me with a lot of really like rat-a-tat-tat, I'm mad, and this is, and just like really fast, hardly breathing. One of the things I've found that's kind of it's almost like magic is just kind of just slow down, breathe a little more, try to speak a little more slowly. Don't be afraid to leave a gap in what you're saying in case somebody needs to interject and say, I disagree with what you just, if I'm trying to summarize and I get it wrong, leave space for people to come in and correct you and things.
I had a boss that did that very well with users, and he would just calm down, calmly say, okay, let's talk about what's going on and let's prioritize. But he had that voice, that nighttime DJ voice.
Yeah.
That was good.
It's a tool. And some people come across things by accident, or they do things and they don't realize. I'm fairly introspective. I'm the type of guy that's going to go to the hotel at night and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to think, okay, what all happened today? Where did I go wrong, or where did I go right? And I'm trying to figure out, do fewer of the things that go wrong and more of the things that go right. I had a tremendous luxury of not only was I able to leave on Friday, but I was able to contact anybody at Oracle I needed. I mean, literally, if I needed a decision from Ron Wall, I could have probably gotten it. The organization was very supportive, and everybody wanted the same thing, right? Customers are buying new, really young products because they're trying to jump ahead of their competition and make decisions faster. And Oracle ERP back then was a new thing, and it was a competitive advantage, and it was to your advantage to be able to get it earlier. It was a little bit, I mean, it was to Oracle advantage to get it to Oracle's advantage to get it to you earlier, because they want to make more money and have bigger sales. And there's a little bit of risk that goes along with buying a new product. And, people were pretty much aware of that. They just felt like the amount of risk they signed up to got exceeded by their vendor. And, sometimes the vendor had a right to be impatient with their customers, because sometimes the customers wouldn't have good processes, and they would make the software look worse than it was. And so kind of being in the middle was, for me, it was fun. I can see how a lot of people would have been frustrated by it, because getting yelled at every week, by a new group of people was pretty hard. But getting the hug on Friday, and literally that was kind of my aim, is by Friday, I want the companies to hug and feel like, okay, I understand better now why this is the way it is and what to do instead. And if I could leave with that, I felt very fulfilled, and that gave me the energy to do it again the next week. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, this is a little live event that we do every Tuesday morning at 10:30 United States Central Time. You're welcome to join. Just visit, let's see, I've got a QR code here. Visit methodr.com. Then you can get the Zoom URL for participating live. We'd love to have you, because we have interesting chats before and after the show. So that's it, folks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next week.